Atlantis, one of 4 operational orbiters, now some 280 miles above the Earth's surface, is completing one revolution every 90 minutes. This equates to a speed approaching 16,000 miles per hour. Back on the ground in the KSC at Cape Canaveral, Florida, that's Kennedy Space Center, not Kentucky Stirred Chicken, the mission is monitored by NASA personnel and broadcast to its visitors. It is a most humbling experience being here and absorbing a nation's pride at what they have achieved. For the Space Shuttle is America's most versatile manned spacecraft to date. Its maiden flight in 1981 marked the real beginning of space travel. For unlike its predecessors, Mercury, Gemini and Apollo, the shuttle is a reusable spaceship, designed for years of service and capable of making repeated round trips to orbit. The Space Shuttle system consists of 3 primary elements: an orbiter spacecraft with 3 powerful liquid-fueled main engines, 2 solid-fueled booster rockets, and an external tank to hold fuel, liquid hydrogen, and oxidizer, liquid oxygen. The forward fuselage structure of the orbiter is composed of aluminium alloy panels, frames and bulkheads. The crew cabin is supported within the fuselage by 4 attach points and is welded to create a pressure-tight vessel. The crew module has a side hatch for normal entry and exit, and a hatch from the airlock into the payload bay for spacewalk access to the outside. Shaped like an airplane, the 122-foot-long orbiter lifts off like a rocket, orbits like a spacecraft, and returns to Earth on a landing strip, just like an airplane. It can transport and place in Earth orbit cargoes weighing up to 65,000 pounds. This cargo is carried in a bay 15 feet in diameter and 60 feet long. Shuttle astronauts have delivered into orbit satellites for communications, Earth observations, scientific research and military purposes, whilst they have also recovered and repaired spacecraft and dispatched robot probes to the planets. Because Cape Canaveral is in the tropics, the humidity is very high, upwards of 95%, and the need for fluids is constant, even though all the buildings are air-conditioned. Thank goodness for Coke.
I'll give it a good shake before I give it to you.
The current mission data is constantly being updated on screens all around the complex, with live commentary to accompany the information. Space travel and exploration has come a very long way since the days of Yuri Gagarin and Sputnik 1, which first blasted to prominence in 1957. It seems incredulous now that a man could be put into something so small and vulnerable as the single-seater Mercury capsule, be launched into space, complete a few laps, and be returned safely. The fact that the Gemini project, so named because it was a 2-seater capsule, allowed the first spacewalk, even if one of the astronauts' gloves floated free and is now in permanent orbit around the Earth. Both look incredibly Heath Robinson by today's standards. But even the supremely successful 3-man project of the Apollo Saturn V era looks very dated, although it first landed man on the moon in 1969. Can it really be that long ago? The Russian Soyuz spacecraft looks even more utilitarian. What memories and sights these early pioneers of space exploration must hold, not least the crew of the disastrously ill-fated Apollo 13. But especially by Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, crew of the Apollo 11 mission, the first men on the moon. The shuttle era began just over 20 years after the first American satellite in space, the Explorer 1, in 1958. The early focus of NASA's launch operations centered on the Cape, where existing rockets and launch pads were modified and used to launch early satellites and astronauts of the Mercury and Gemini programs. In late 1962, initial preparations commenced for the construction of Launch Complex 39 to handle the Apollo Saturn V launch vehicles, and today the launch and landing of the Space Shuttle. This access arm was once used by astronauts Armstrong, Aldrin and Collins, the crew of the moon landing Apollo 11 mission, to ferry them from the launch tower to the capsule of the rocket itself, some 300 feet above ground level. Today it seems a very claustrophobic arrangement, and one can only imagine the horror when in 1967 an Apollo capsule caught fire on the pad, with the loss of the 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee and Ed White. In the years following World War II, America's military rockets began to outgrow the range available in the Western Desert, so the War Department selected Cape Canaveral as the testing area for long-range guided missiles. But the Apollo spacecraft with its Saturn V rocket was to be the vehicle that would transport man from his hitherto solitary home on Earth to the beginnings of an unknown future, in his first faltering steps amongst the stars, on that historical day, the 16th of July, 1969. Looking even more like a bad attempt at putting together an MFI wardrobe, the lunar module was home to the 2 astronauts during their one-day stay on the moon's surface. All but the operational areas of the spaceport's 84,000 acres are designated as a national wildlife refuge, much of which is open to the public. But even here, in the rocket garden, local wildlife has found a use for man's eternal cast-offs. A stork has made its nest at the top of a Mercury rocket. At the Mission Briefing Centre, hourly bulletins are given to an absorbing audience. Whilst 280 miles straight up, Atlantis looks down on her home port. The shuttle provides flexibility never before achieved in space operations and allows space to be routinely used as the resource it is. Back down to Earth, and the memorabilia shows that even in space, Coke is there, just for the taste of it and the needs of the astronauts. A large granite stone, carved and angled so that the sun's rays are always projected through the back, stands to highlight the names of all the brave individuals who have lost their lives in this great adventure that is the very future of mankind. Designed to move space vehicles along a 7-foot bed of crushed stone 3.5 miles to the launch pad, the crawler transporters move at 1 mile per hour, can lift and carry 14.5 million pounds of load and are half the size of a football pitch. Soaring along with the rockets here are southern bald eagles, the national emblem of the USA. Complex 39B, the launch pad for Atlantis, and one of two identical shuttle launch pads, is constructed of 52,000 cubic metres of reinforced concrete. On top of the pad are 6 steel pedestals used to support the shuttle package. Nearby are 2 service towers, used to provide access to the rocket for astronaut boarding, payload installations, fueling and final checkout before launching. The Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, is one of the world's largest structures in volume, enclosing about 129 million cubic feet. It is here that space shuttles are assembled into flight-ready space vehicles before being taken by crawler to the launch pad. 1 week later, and Atlantis makes a perfect touchdown at the Cape after a 3 million mile round trip. The Kennedy Space Center is America's spaceport for launching people and machines into Earth orbit and beyond, to explore the mysteries of space and gain new knowledge to be used to benefit all of us.